One of my other go-to guys is Warren Sapp. The other guy in the picture, number 95, by the way, that's Deidrin Sanat, former USF Bulls nose tackle, who is now trying to make the team. Was with the Falcons the last couple of years, but that's Deidrin Sanat right there, number 95. So I literally just got off the phone with Warren Sapp about 4 minutes ago, right when this podcast was kicking off. I ended the phone call with Warren. Going to be doing some a feature on Logan Hall, and what I jotted down from what Sapp said, and this kind of goes to what Will Golston was saying, Matt, about Logan Hall. Sapp is a huge fan. He got a chance to work with this guy today and loved what he saw. He said, hostile, agile, mobile, eager to learn. And he said, this kid's not nice. He's got some dog in him. He said, Gerald McCoy was too nice. So I think this guy, he definitely has a fan, not just in Will Golston, not just in Todd Bowles and Jason Light, not just in Casey Rogers and Larry Locust. Warren Sapp is a Logan Hall fan. And I'll tell you what, Matt, what that means is so far so good. This kid's yet to put any pads on, but for him with his athleticism to be impressing so far so quickly is really saying something.
100%. And I mean, it's already a seal of approval that Warren Sapp, who's an NFL Hall of Famer, who's in the Bucs Ring of Honor, arguably the greatest Buccaneer of all time on the field, depending on who you ask. It's one thing just to get that seal of approval from him, but I think it's even more important too, because as you just said, Sapp wasn't a huge fan of Gerald McCoy. Sapp hasn't been the nicest about Vita Vea when it comes to what he thinks or what he expects of Vita Vea.
It was interesting, Matt, that Vita Vea wasn't there today. Maybe Sapp would have had his mind changed, if he was there. But that's one of the defensive players that wasn't there. Another one, and we'll get to this quickly. I want to get back to your point, but I do see some comments here. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the big news right before we went on the podcast. The Buccaneers signing Akeem Hicks, one of my favorite defensive linemen, longtime Bear, 40.5 career sack guy, went to the Pro Bowl in 2018. We'll have more on Akeem Hicks in just a little bit here on the show. But Matt, go ahead and finish your point.
Yeah, I just want to say the fact that Sapp isn't always the most complimentary of players. I mean, I remember last year when Sapp was on this podcast, and we were talking about Christian Barmore, who ended up getting drafted by the Patriots, I believe.
Yeah.
And Warren Sapp went out and said, I worked with this kid. If he gets drafted in the first round, I will stay off of social media for an entire year. And Sapp is pretty dialed into social media. He's got all of his Instagram, hashtag Sapp not fishing and whatever he's doing. But you know what? He was spot on. Barmore did not go in the first round. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is Sapp, obviously, again, one of the greatest players of all time. So he knows a thing or two about playing defensive tackle. And so for him to actually be this complimentary about Hall, one, surprises me a little bit. Not that I don't think Hall is a good player, but just because Sapp is a very harsh grader, because I think a lot of the times too, he compares players to like try to get on Sapp's level. And that's just extremely tough to do because he's one of the greatest of all time. And it's interesting too, that you said that Sapp said that he's a dog, because we've heard, Will Golston essentially mentioned that. And I asked Aaron Stinney today, too. I said, what have you seen lining up against Logan Hall? And again, it's OTAs, but he used the word dog as well, too.
Yeah.
So it's a common theme when it comes to Logan Hall there. And that's nothing but great news when you hear it from multiple people, including a Hall of Famer.
Right. Well, and I think the thing, too, is when you look at Logan Hall, sometimes you look for little things, right, Matt? Sometimes it's you're trying to read between the lines and just kind of pick up on some little nuances and things like that. It's rare that the defensive lines get nicknames in college, right? Because you can have the purple people eaters with the Minnesota Vikings. You can have the Doomsday Defense,
the New York Sack Exchange,
exactly. The Steel Curtain with Pittsburgh and their defensive front. But in college, it's so hard because you're only there for 4 years tops, right? And a lot of good players leave after just a couple. I mean, Logan Hall was a junior leaving the Houston Cougars, but the Houston defensive line had a nickname called Sack Avenue, right? And it kind of goes to that mentality a little bit, right? It's not just, hey, we're the Houston Cougars defensive line. It's like, no, like we're going to be all about getting to the quarterback. We're Sack Avenue, right? And it's like a little oomph right there that I think is cool. And it's a mentality. Rushing the passer, you can say what you want about size, technique, all that stuff. It's a mentality. It's doing whatever you can to get the quarterback on the ground on those passing downs. And so this kid has it. And we've heard from now Sapp and Aaron Stinney, as you mentioned today. And obviously, Jason Light, Todd Bowles, they're going to be complimentary. They just invested their first pick in this guy at the top of the second round. So they're going to be biased. But to have someone, Matt, like you said, Warren Sapp, who just doesn't throw out compliments, you got to earn it. Like he has to see it and believe it. Sapp is not one to BS, right? He will shoot you straight. So to hear that, I think it's very promising, right? It's a good sign for this kid. I'm excited to see him in pads. Can't wait to see him even in these preseason games to see him under the lights and see what he can do.
I can't wait. And here's Todd Bowles talking about having Warren Sapp at Bucs OTAs today.
Observations of him today?
Me and him have a good relationship, and wanted to bring him in just to teach the D-line a few things. Coach Rogers and Coach Lowe were all for it, so thought it'd be a good idea to learn from a guy that's done it recently, or more recent than the coaches have, and it'd be good for the guys to hear and see a different perspective.
And then Bowles also goes in detail about Logan Hall here as well. It's also a little side video at the end too. Todd Bowles talking about if he's going to watch Tom Brady watching the match, but most of it's about Logan Hall.
Where have you seen any type of improvement from him?
We like the athleticism. He's learning how to play with his pads lower, taking on double teams and understanding when to drop his knee and not just bouncing up, rushing the passer. But he's a very good athlete. We haven't had that kind of athlete inside in a while since we've been here, so we just look forward to him getting better and better scheme-wise and then taking advantage of his athleticism.
You plan on watching Tom during the match?
If I'm not in meetings, I'll catch a round or two.
You ever play golf with him?
I don't think I'm good enough right now.
But how? Yeah, the last part is funny, and that goes back to the comedy side of Todd Bowles.
Right.
But I think the important quote that he had in there is, "We haven't had an athlete like that in quite a while since we've been here."
Yeah.
He's talking about the defensive line. But again, Todd Bowles has worked with Ndamukong Suh, and he's worked with Vita Vea over the past couple of years. So to say something like that about Logan Hall, I think it's a ringing endorsement for him.
Right. It is. And it's not to say that Vita Vea is not athletic, right? He's a freak, but he's also 350, right? So he's a different kind of athlete than Logan Hall is around 290, right? And so just in terms of movement, and we've seen it, you can kind of see when he does the bag drills, you can see the fluidity. And I asked Warren today, because obviously he's worked with Gerald McCoy before, and listen, Gerald McCoy is a 6-time Pro Bowler for the Buccaneers back in the day, was a very good player. And Logan Hall, again, is yet to play it down in the NFL. I don't want to make too much of this, but Sapp pretty much said that this kid just has the athleticism that Todd Bowles is talking about. He's the real deal when it comes to that. The movement, the fluidity, and he's a willing learner. He comes in and just like soaks it up like a sponge. He doesn't have all the answers, and he knows that. So I got the sense that I'm going to be having lunch with Warren Sapp, I think, tomorrow. I'll get more information from him about not just Hall, but the other defensive linemen that he worked with today. But it's so far so good for Hall. And I mean, Warren Sapp, one of the best pass rushers, not just in Tampa Bay history, but in the NFL, certainly at the defensive tackle position. Different body types, different eras. I get that. But Warren Sapp knows how to get to the quarterback. And I'm excited to see Todd Bowles embrace Sapp the way he has. Those two have a good history, as you played in the video, Matt. And we might see some more Warren Sapp.